mine earlier. I had to cut quite a bit out of it. But basically, what I'm going to do this evening is just to talk through. I haven't actually got a portfolio as such. I mean, this is how I present myself, rather, which is mostly through various medium, and I'm going to try and work it so that you'll gain something from the fact that although I've got lots of work, there are areas of mine that I think you'll be able to bring some of yourself into, which is what I often do, especially with the fact that you've got social media and there's a blurring of boundaries between what's professional and what's your own work. So this is a bit of all of those. So basically what your portfolio has got to do is to tell somebody who you are, what you can do, so that they can answer what they need and you can help them. So it's sort of like it's a conversation between you and potential people looking at it, so that they can find out something about you. Because ultimately, I've found that no matter what your work's like, people employ you. Obviously, your work needs to be good, but they're more interested in you as a person, what you have to offer them. So obviously, you need to tell them what you can do. You have to find out what they need, because sometimes you might want to tailor your portfolio such that it meets their type of design work requirement. And then it needs to be clear as to how you can actually help them. So this is me. Well, that's not actually me, but that is me as a mascot. I designed that for a company, that robot for a company about 2007, I think it was, but I kept the copyright to it, and I've changed the colors, and I've started using it really when I need a presence, and it's just a fun item, basically. The company that I run is BIB Design. It's just me. It didn't used to be, and it started in 1967, in fact, and I joined in 93. And in 2002, the company was handed over to me by the guy that ran it, and it sort of shrunk in size by that time. So I've changed the direction of where it's going, partly because as a sole trader, you're not likely to work for the big companies that we were working for. So most of this is going to be sort of from my website. So what I've tried to do on my website here is to explain what product design or industrial design can do for them, or what I can do for the person. So this is actually not running from my website, but these are the first sort of pages that you see. So some of the products here I've highlighted and given them some sort of caption so that they might be able to see what those products can do or what the designer could do for them. Because typically every job I do is completely different. So it won't be that someone's asking me to design something I've already designed. So therefore, they need to be able to see something in how you work, what you've done before, and see how that relates to them. So I've mentioned I've worked for all sorts of sizes of companies. I work for rather smaller ones now because I sort of prefer it, but BAA was probably the biggest company I ever worked for. And this was a case of completely redesigning all their airport furniture, all their signage, all the hardware for that. It's a massive job and not one I would want to undertake now, but you know, it was a very useful learning curve to present to Sir Lord Egan and all these people on this design work. But so this is my web page is a mixture of types. If you scroll down, you get this page where basically that would be an animation at the top right, but a little lesson here. It's a GIF animation, which works perfectly on every website without having to run any, but it doesn't work on Adobe Connect, as I found out. So that little box there was supposed to show you what the animation was going to do, and it doesn't work. Anyway, so I've moved my business slightly to make the most of the skills that I've attained. Being that I'm an industrial designer, I will often use my drawings to put them into product illustrations. What I'm trying to do is to communicate either the client's products to their customers or my designs to my clients. But one of the things that has always been a problem with industrial design is that nobody actually knows what an industrial designer really does. Someone that does graphic design, people have an idea about what graphics is. They have an idea about what interior, about what furniture is. But industrial, I've had all sorts of things like, do you design factories or something? So what I've done is I've created a little product that hopefully explains what industrial designers do, or what you're getting when you employ an industrial designer. So I wanted to make it visual. So this works for any designer really, but this little handheld product, which is styled very much in a sort of 1990s style, is sort of the alternative. If you weren't employing a designer, you'd need something like this. And if I just run through it, you'll see the sort of options it's got, the things that a designer needs to have in able to communicate their ideas, to be able to communicate with various people, and to be able to, get a project through from start to finish. That last one's a bit of a joke, I think, but so if you can't, if you can't afford a designer, get one of these, even though it doesn't really exist. But so the next bit of my website shows basically the different categories and products that I've worked on. It's not all of them by any means, but what I've done is I've color coded them, because as I say, not all people coming to your website or to look at your portfolio will be needing it won't be appropriate for them to look at, to necessarily understand from certain things. So this is sort of like the color coding at the top is audio, consumer, medical, inspiration, leisure, environmental, corporate, commercial, furniture, and branding. So if you were to click on any of these, it takes you through to a page like this, where this would list all of the audio stuff that I've done as a slideshow, and so on. It goes through. So the environmental work I've designed for environmental concerns, and feeding the world, as it were, with in desperate climate. Consumer products. Actually, these were very. It was done for in Russia. These ones actually, but lots of medical stuff I've done in the past. This is for dyslexia, for testing dyslexia, and when people are going to the opticians. Quite an old project is furniture, but every project I do, you try to find something that's innovative and hasn't been done before, and that's really by really getting to know what the manufacturing processes are, what the consumer needs, what you can bring to it as an industrial designer. In this case, working for a manufacturer of luxury travel goods, I'd never designed a handbag before, but we did a whole range of stuff, and I brought in features that maybe you would only know about as an industrial designer. But so that was where this came from. And because I can render stuff from CAD, I also do this. This is the side of the illustration. These were sent out to all the athletes at the Olympics in the UK squads. It's about, you know, being squeaky clean and not taking drugs and that sort of thing. And they needed to visualize this, so that they could get Sport England to take it up. So this was working for another branding consultancy that just didn't have the facilities to do the images. So they were available in different colors for different nationalities and that thing. So that sort of thing I was, you know, quite happily do for that thing. And when it comes to illustration, this is a local company in Milton Keynes, Saracen Bikes. They had so I didn't design these, but they were designed out in Taiwan, I think. They didn't have them ready for the press, so they needed somebody who could render them, put all the graphics on them, and it's just a clip of one of them. So. Now, I've done recently a lot of audio work, and in fact, pretty much exclusively since 2017, I've been working in the audio industry. And it's fortunate because music is a big hobby of mine. Now, this is where I'm bringing the possibility of, you know, the fact that you're still studying means you won't have access to a massive portfolio. Well, I say massive, but 30 odd years of the portfolio that I've got. And there are times in my work when I can't show stuff because it hasn't been released yet. Or there's times when you just haven't got something that you think is, you know, that newsworthy, or you know, you need to get stuff out there on a regular basis. I've got a client of mine who laments the fact that he has to post on Instagram every day. I mean, he's got masses of followers, and he's in the audio industry, and, you know, everybody loves what he does, but it becomes a real bind to try and post all the time. And if you're working on a project, especially in industrial design, that might take 6 months to 2 years, you've got nothing to show. So when this sort of thing's happened, I've moved into sort of like, being that music is a hobby, I started setting up a blog. And this was on Tumblr, because it started quite a while ago. But I was looking for something that I could post regularly on, that would feed into my work, but was related to my skills as an industrial designer, but would also give me the option to bring in other ideas. So this was called Physical Music. The idea was that I was fascinated by music and composing music, and I saw a correlation between how what happens when you're sitting at a piano and composing music and you make mistakes, and how that enriches music. And I wondered if there was a way that you could do the same sort of thing with design. So while I was sitting in front of the computer, I was thinking, you know, how can I bring what I've learned from music composition into design work? And so the blog, there were about 100 of these, borrowed from, you know, sayings from people like Paul Klee, and because a lot of artists in the past have, you know, looked at color theory and tried to relate that to music. You've got the likes of Kandinsky. So this is my reimagination in 3D of his composition 8, looking to see if taking a three-dimensional version of it, looking at it from different views, whether it gives you a different idea of the composition and a different idea of what music it might have related to. So it was this sort of thing that I was looking at, and bringing it into sort of the physical realm with this material resonance. You'll notice that one, for some reason, got 3,467 notes on that blog, and it turned out that hitting things is very popular with people in America who play in the university bands. So they all something liked it, but quite often, you know, you miss the mark completely. But all of this information I was bringing together, and it led me to thinking about how, if you've got a synthesizer, which basically makes sounds out of shapes, how that could correlate to CAD workstation, and so I developed out of that this theoretical sort of 3D modeling synthesizer using some of these things. This is basically Alexander Scriabin's color organ that I've reimagined. So when you played various notes, it projected lights, and the resulting light was that chord color. There's lots of artists who've tried that. There was a whole list of those that I physically modeled. So this is what ended up with one of the versions. So I created a synthesizer where the controls dually controlled a CAD system. So you were drawing shapes, and there's a correlation between certain items on a like envelope shapes and sort of resonance, things like volume. I mean, all these I mapped to each of the controls theoretically, and this is the resulting. Let's see if I you've got things like saturation, resonance. Only the screen is shaped forms using sine waves, square waves, triangular waves, filtering with LFO, and all that. And then you press the button and you print the form out of this rather futuristic looking 3D printer. So that was the result in some respects of my blog. And strangely enough, having done that, it helped me when I was interviewed by someone to design audio for them, which just happened to come by chance. But talking about all this suddenly stood me out from perhaps the other design consultancies that that they'd looked at. So yes, I've got Russollo's noise machines were part of my blog, yes, because they actually had them at the V&A, I think, a few years ago. So anyway, the fact that I've brought in a lot of my personal ideas, personal work into this means that I can now share some of that with Instagram and LinkedIn, because a lot of these things, even LinkedIn is getting much more personal now. So although I've got 2 LinkedIn profiles, I have one for me personally and one for BIB. But you know, with these things, with Instagram and LinkedIn, realistically, you haven't got much time for somebody to see your posts. So you've got to sometimes do something to grab their attention. So my little mascot here tries to help me on this one sometimes. And he does the same on Instagram. And it's great fun putting the music and the sound effects to all of these as well. Let's bring in another part of my hobby. You know, I'm more a sound designer than a composer, I would say. So anyway, what it has done is, now that I'm working in the audio, it's now allowed me to bring my own ideas into this. So these are some little prototypes I've made of some Omni speakers. They're only tiny little bookshelf ones. And I've teamed up with a leading audio expert who has worked for a lot of the big speaker companies. And we're looking now at bringing out a range of our own speakers. And fortunately, I've just been asked to design some retro speakers for a guy who supplies lots of DJs. So, you know, it wasn't intended, but I think the fact that I was fascinated by that subject, has helped me to have the conversations with people, and this sort of thing. So this is my idea of bringing back a radiogram, which is superb hi-fi, but it's it hasn't happened yet. But I'm working with people now that maybe my hobby can come into the work of BIB. So I'm just, but going back to the portfolio very quickly. Your portfolio should have some sort of narrative. It needs to say something about you. It needs to guide them. So it needs to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And because I've done lots of animations, I've edited those, composed the music, sort of thing. And this is actually what I use on YouTube as a show reel. So this is me signing off.
Wow, that was incredible. Thank you so much. There's lots of love in the chat there for you, Stephen, and various questions which you can probably work through maybe whilst Slavitsa's uploading and then starting. So
right, I will do. Yeah,
that was great. Thank you ever so much. So we now have Slavica, who's going to talk about architecture, which is great. Looking forward to hearing this too. I think you're all very lucky tonight. I think you're seeing some wonderful things. Okay, I'll hand over to you now, Slavica.
Thank you. I mean, I can't, somebody needs to sing in the background during my presentation, so I can't really match the grandiosity from, you know, from a previous designer. So well done. I'm really, I'm here to present, but actually I really enjoyed Stephen's presentation. And each of us, I don't know, as students, you might not think that, but later on, we do quite, we engage quite personally in what we do in the design. And very often it's not just one discipline. You know, we have here with Stephen combination of hobbies and professional stuff, and also we just bring so much of our personality. So, you know, it's interesting what comes out, and there are no two identical designs. There are no two identical designers. So I'm so pleased to sort of be part of this. What I'm going to talk is the architectural portfolio. And I would like, you know, I know that it's maybe, now we have a little bit more time, but I would like to ask you guys, you have a little bit of a flavor from Stephen's presentation. What do you mean? What is portfolio? What do you think portfolio is? If you can just type briefly in the chat. You know, people talk about property portfolio, or, you know, portfolio in terms of photographies. Yes, it is a bit like a CV. Yes. Collection of the work, presentation of a design. Yeah, collection. Your best. Certainly, you're not going to present your worst in a or mediocre stuff. Oh, I can see we have here an architect as well, so I better be careful what I talk about the profession. Skills and abilities, yes. What you are able, yes. Well done, well done. So, you know, but this is like a definition. So that's the body of the work which represents your experience as an architect or a designer. So I'm going to talk about the architects specifically, but architects are designers. And it is the showcase, and it is the best work. And it's actually, portfolio is for sharing with either employers when you go for an interview, or if you regardless if you are working as a freelance or in a big company, you are going to attract the clients as well. And I believe personally it should be really a true reflection of your skills, of your particular design approach. So we did get a flavor of Stephen's design approach and technical abilities. And also in architect, as well as Stephen said, there was 30 years behind that. There is how we evolved in our career. And clients really want to know how we evolve, but also they want to get a sense of us. So in architecture, we have sort of two different types of portfolio. One is sample portfolio, and another one is full portfolio. And this is actually the difference is with these two questions, you know, who is my audience and what I'm trying to achieve with these two samples portfolios and full portfolios. So sample, as the word said, is a much smaller scope of works, and a portfolio is where you are going and you're just making the most of it. So the sample portfolio in architecture, and hopefully you as a designers, very soon you will have that opportunity. Sample portfolio, somebody says it's sort of a CV. It goes in hand with the CV. So you are illustrating your CV. In architecture, it's this maximum 6 to 8 pages, and it shouldn't be larger than 8 megabytes. And this is actually you make an evidence of what has been mentioned in the CV. So if you're in your CV putting certain buildings, well, they don't have a clue what that is. But if you visually complement that CV, that actually makes sense. And very often I work for a really large construction company called Kier. We have an in-house design team, and I work for that team. And very often when we are bidding for big frameworks, so that would be, for example, bidding for the framework Building School for the Futures. So it's majority is a public clients, whether they are county councils, whether they are public authorities. So when they employ us, they don't employ just for one building. They employ us for a number of years for a number of buildings of a similar or the same character. Okay, Bella, you know some people from Kier then. Full portfolio is actually much bigger, more details, and you would bring. Let's say you will send your sample portfolio by email, and then based on that sample portfolio, the future employer will say, "Oh, that's really lovely. Shall we have an interview?" So you wouldn't come to an interview with the sample portfolio, you would come with the full portfolio. And though we are all sort of online and electronic, in our profession, clients really like when you come to the portfolio with one of those, we call them portfolio, those are minimum A3, sometimes A2 or A1 folders, and we print them or they are laminated, so they actually like to see things in 3D. So we carry them for these full portfolios. And then there are various key projects we worked on. There are different stages. All of you know that we have a briefing stage, we have an idea, we have a prototyping, we have an execution. In architecture, manufacturing is a construction. So the clients who employ us, they want to know that it's not only that you have done a good design, but that you can communicate with other disciplines, the contractors, builders. And some of us are very good in construction detailing. Some of us are very good in problem solving. So actually bringing a full portfolio to an interview works really in your favor, where you will demonstrate, well, look at this, we have the brief was looking for that, but we managed to do this, or there is an added value to it, or it was a complete chaos, but we managed to do something. So it is actually good opportunity for you to bring, for an architect to bring for an interview. And of course, it doesn't. You will see, Stephanie. You will see the rule applies. You will different clients will have different rules. So, for example, in architecture, because not all our clients are, how would I say, very equipped with the computers. Sometimes in interior design or in architecture, you might have somebody who wants to employ you with 20 megabytes if they have the machines good enough for that. I'm here having a slide about, and Stephen said that there are different stages of our career, and our portfolio should reflect that stages. So students' portfolio really have to give and deliver the message that you have ability to think and how you approach your design. And you could talk about your academic or works or curricular works. I have a student from U101 who was actually in programming, but he took his portfolio or TMA 1, 2, 3, 4 on his interview. And the employer was very pleased to see that there is this design thinking agenda or focus or contemplation. So actually they employed him. I don't know if they employed him just because he brought the U101 portfolio, but he definitely went with that. So I would suggest that you actually keep your stuff from your student days, and that ability to develop is also important. For example, junior architect will have a mixture of academic and professional experience, and this is more really a professional experience, which means very often in every design and architecture as well, once you become an architect and you work for somebody or with somebody, there are constraints like time, like money. So sometimes your best idea are not executed. So it should be some sort of a compromise. And within this compromise, you could develop actually design sensibilities. And I remember when I started studying architecture, I just didn't like, and it was a little bit too much for me if I have a site with the slope. Oh God, levels, which levels? I just thought, oh, I like plain, almost bungalows. But actually, because I had to face few of the sloping sites, I now love sloping sites because they bring some dynamics, the different flow. But unless we are exposed, then we wouldn't know that. Again, there is a mid-level architect and there is a senior architect, so you could read that while I was talking. So, and obviously, as you, it will be really not. How would I say that? It would be wasted opportunity as a senior architect. You go there and you just bring your detailed drawings. Well, they could employ somebody with the detailing drawings. So again, a little guidance here. Choose your best work and most relevant work. This is important. Sometimes your best work is not relevant for that particular client, and select appropriate drawings and images. And be selective, be ruthless. Just don't go for certain things just because they're there. And I will never forget our bidding team was really not pleased because we didn't get some job. And I said, but well, there was good references. I said, which images did you bring? Oh, we didn't have time to bring images. But which did you bring? And then I have a look. It was like some mediocre images from changing rooms. Changing rooms are, in a PE. I mean, who would do that? You're not telling the most of it. So what I'm saying, really appropriate and the best images. Choose the format, how you want to format your it's like a template. Arrange visuals, have a front cover, create a file, and obviously with that you need to send a cover letter. I mean, I'm preparing you for the future employers, but yeah, cover letter is very, very important. Or, in these days, we can create a web page. I found last night, how creating a, winning architecture portfolio, one of the proposals. So Before I go and tell you about my work, do you have any questions about architectural portfolio so far? Or shall I go? Or maybe as Theo says, maybe we can have the maybe we can do that at the end. Kasia, we can you can create a decent portfolio after finishing your studies. The guys with U101, the guys who finish 101, U101, you can create a really decent portfolio. You don't need much time, but in terms of how much time in preparing, yeah, that's a different thing. You know, probably you need 2 weeks. And Stephen said you need to update that. No, it doesn't need to be strictly academic. You can bring something from your, you know, if you have done something for somebody, or you have created a jewelry yourself, or you have created a beautiful, innovative Christmas decoration, I would put that too. So apply that, anything really. Yes. What skills? Yes. Well, really the biggest skill in architecture that we need is to communicate, because we need and translate. Dare I say that? I think we need to know what the client wants, and then we translate that into the spaces, volumes, and then we need to tell them why certain things are like that. So I think the key skills really valued are communication in architecture altogether. But in your portfolio, you need to demonstrate that you can hear the client. You might not judge, but you might analyze what they want, and then again you might select your ideas. But what is also valued is the skill to visually select the most important stuff. Absolutely, Stephen. Yes, you can be a PhD, you can be a genius. If they don't get a sense of you, you need to fit in. And I think Stephen said when an interview with the portfolio, you sort of need to know what they clients need. But actually, every interview is an opportunity for you. You're not going to go somewhere where your personality or your design or your design approach are not going to fit. That's not going to be helpful neither, you know, to them or to you. Okay, user-centered. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about this building. This is the first building that I have done here in this country, and it is Impington Village College in Cambridge. I looked into, like, the job came to our office 2003 or 2004. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Let me see what's there. And then I read that actually is one of the examples of the Bauhaus movement in this country. And I immediately said, can I work on this project? And even project managers, they didn't know what that is. And they said, yeah, why not? So again, you have to have a nose and sniff the opportunity, which will be exciting for you. So, and that is a college nearby Cambridge. The brief was to build 20 classrooms, maths and science, and then other 3 laboratories. So usually what architects do, we go and we analyze the context. Remember the sloping side? sloping sites that I didn't like, sites that I didn't like at the beginning. So we go on site, we see what is there. Can we hook something to something? Can we make a contrast to something? So we are sort of looking for inspirations. So when I went there, I saw that there is Bauhaus. Okay, I'm going to research Bauhaus. And architecture is quite a lot of researching. It's not just drawing, it is researching. Then in my own view, there was a rhythm of openings, rhythm of these windows. And also the windows in the existing buildings were not just windows from one courtyard. So there was a transparency to another courtyard, So you could see maybe two classrooms when you look through. So for me, there was a rhythm and there is a transparency which sort of I choose to carry on. I did a little sketch myself, and yes, you do have to be good in maths, but not like science maths, but yes, you need to be good in maths, particularly geometry. So I drafted something by hand. I still like sketches. And then I have a team of junior architects who will do the 3Ds for me. And you can see a picture here, which I think it should demonstrate. It should demonstrate the transparency, a photo of the transparency from the side and the transparency of the building. Yes, we do work sometimes alongside the interior designers, but very often we are baseline interior designers as well. So this was my proposal. It has some specifics. I won't bore you with that. I have other stuff to talk to you. But in this one, because it is a classroom, we have to figure out the circulation. In one moment you have 20 classrooms, you have 600 kids, and then in one moment you don't have anybody. Then how they're going to gather and where they're going to gather, And for me, gathering is usually round shape gathering. So I thought, in the middle, I will put some sort of a gathering. But because it's a two-story, you then have the staircase. Staircases always are good near the gathering. So it's a compromise, constant compromise in architecture. It is called AutoCAD 3D, and we in more recent time we use Revit. I'm talking about 3D pieces. So, and then once you and by doing all this, there are stages in architecture, and there is some sort of a planning stage, then construction stage, building control stage. Then there is a tender where you tender to builders, and there is a construction. And this is me a long time ago. And this is my favorite client. We had really big laughs. So you do have a personal relationship. This project was probably 2 to 3 years, and then the construction. You have 3 to 4 years, one project from the initial idea. So you get on with people. You need to get on with people. And we present the mood boards, which are here. So we need somebody to sign. Somebody asked about the interior, but we need somebody to sign the certain finishes. So we would go and ask for the different finishes, different carpets, vinyls, lino. In this case, I didn't use vinyl. I used lino. I went to Germany to see what the Bauhaus is really about. The bricks that I have designed are stuck bricks, so they don't. You will see later. The joints are in a particular way, and one would say, "Oh, it's lovely. You just designed," but actually, there was a geological survey, and part of the building was in a water plateau, so the underground waters were high. There were planning application objections. The part of this building was in green belt. There was a tree preservation order. Sport of England, we needed to talk with Sport of England because we redesigned the pitches. In the middle of the project, suddenly biodiversity officer visits the site and says, well, you have to stop the building. I mean, you have to stop the building on £5 million. Why is that? I ask. Well, we have a great crested newt. Okay, what's the problem with it's not so close to the building site? Well, great crested newt, apparently, he is not really happy with the girls from his pond. So he goes 500 meters around to look for the girlfriend or wife or to make babies. And actually, in a mating season, instead of fencing the pond, we needed to fence our building site. So the newt, great crested newt, which is protected species in this country, has opportunity to. I think that the architecture is also. It's not only about the building, but it's also about the nature as well. There were change of briefs in the middle of finalizing our project. New head teacher came with new ideas. There were some legal issues, covenants. In stage D, we were $500,000 above the client's budget. Our scheme went to Development Control Committee, you name it. So I would suggest whenever you see any planning application nearby, you just go and have a look what's going on. So then when the construction came, my gathering in around proved to be quite difficult for the contractors. Then there is a pressure from the contractors. They ask, oh, can we maybe make a rectangular opening? Because the client will save, let's say, 50 grand. Then you have to know, you have to play the game, actually, what is happening and what not. And what actually in this context, what we did, you remember the round thing? I wanted here to be a tree. So imagine tree in this glazed area, it will thrive. My beloved client whom I worked, he said, oh, no, we'll have the kitchen here. I said, what? You're not going to have sausages and smell of sausages or, But he said, we're not having a tree. Well, we didn't have a tree here. I compromised on that, but also he didn't put the hot meals, but cold meals. What's really important in architecture is that we shape our buildings. That's a really good mantra in architecture. We shape our buildings, and afterwards the building or the spaces, urban spaces, shape us. And what I would like also to say, that once you become somehow attached to certain school, certain site, you become not their personal architect, but they call you on certain anniversaries. They have workshops, and I love working with kids and students, because you wouldn't believe that, but actually you are an inspiration to some of us, some of designers. And once we did this really good work, there is a Royal Institute of British Architects, which we belong to and pay the membership, and RIBA, you sometimes, depending on how confident you are, you submit your work for the award. Then you have local, regional, and national judging. So that scheme, which I just briefly explained to you and show you, we were shortlisted for the Southeast RIB Awards, but I would really suggest there is a sterling prize for you. I mean, you to be somehow engaged and involved. Another project, and I'm sorry, I might take a little bit more time. Another project is a primary school, but in this context, why I'm suggesting this is that I'm an architect, but actually with the M&E consultants, we needed to figure out the renewable energies that we are going to use. And then we know what is the consumption, and we see whether we will have PVs, whether we will have solar panels, different wind turbines, biomass boiler, and see which of these we are going to take. What is the payback? So, and again, this all was within the sustainability agenda. And the sustainability is not just which materials which we are going to use, but how efficient things are, whether we have thermal zoning and thermal zoning of the lighting, whether we use VOC, which is materials. We had water fountains. So there is something called BREEAM, which assesses how much the building is sustainable. And lastly, I wanted also to say this is another scheme which is in Cambridge, St. Matthew's Primary School. You can see how 3D actually demonstrates almost identically these days what we can do. In this project, because there were so many sequences, the school was in operation during the building, so we have to move 3-4 times while the construction is here, then refurbishment is there, demolition is here. It's a complete orchestration, and you have to have that orchestration really in your mind. You have to know in each moment what's going on where. So I suggested we have a time lapse, because it's really, really interesting to have a time lapse. And actually, the contractor didn't like the time lapse. Later on, on a personal level, I figured out they were really worried if somebody who is smoking will be caught on these cameras. But I would go to the nearby building, climb on the top of the building, sort of introduce myself, and I would go every month at the beginning, and then later more frequently, and I would take some pictures, and I created some sort of a time lapse. So nobody asked me to do that. I wanted to do that, and this is which is something you need to be committed. And in terms of portfolio, something like before, like time lapse, but something before and after is very, very interesting and good. And lastly, architects love competitions where we have more freedom, where we stay late, where we send emails to each other in 2 or 3 a.m. before the deadline, and we all love that. And those are some of the competitions, international competition, charity competitions in Africa, which we did. I also, from time to time, write about architecture. I was a correspondent from the UK, and I would just sort of deliver the message. This is, again, something that I did voluntarily. And as an architect, you are going to have a friend who says, oh, come and help. We also do these things. I do these things. This is a friend who bought a house but wanted to do a little bit of a refurbish. You can say put some roof windows and some alteration of the front. You do that. The trouble is with the friends, always, how do you pay? So I don't want to give you my advice how to ask your friends to pay for this, or you do it for free. And again, if they need to do some planning application and convert even the garage in one development, so you would sort of do a little bit of photo montage. Sometimes you get a lovely clients like this one where I designed the farm as a sort of a freelance. And finally, those are design disciplines which I managed to find out, alphabetically, and none of us is doing just one actually design disciplines. So if you know the things from one field, you will be really in architecture. I'm not saying I will be really perfect product designer, but you have seen in Stephen's portfolio, there is some architecture, there is some interior, there is some graphic, fashion design, environmental design, modular design, landscape and lighting design, as well as the sound design, transition design, also web design. So you have lots of opportunities, I would believe, if you are sort of a weasel and you know where you want to go. So I wish you that your portfolio helps you reach the destinations you like and you would like to be in your career. So I think this is where I would finish. It is 5 years, Kasia, 5 years to architecture.
That's been fantastic, Slavica. Thank you. And I think it's given a lot of insight into how you might prepare a portfolio, what's expected, what kind of, to give courage to those of you who are still studying, that you can still make a portfolio. You don't have to wait till the end. It's something that you build. And also, as I said in some of the previous tutorials that I've given, you can go for jobs when you're a student, and don't be afraid. You never know what opportunities might be there and at what level you might be taken on. So that's great. I'm going to hand over to Mike now because I'm aware of the time. I hope you can stay for the rest of it, because it'll be good to see Mike's, which is an illustration portfolio, which again gives a different flavour. And I think it's really valuable to all of you from the comments I'm seeing here that you're getting a lot from this.
So. And architects can't keep the time boundary, Tia, as demonstrated.
There's so much to show. That's the thing. It's so exciting to see. So I do understand that. It's great.
Thank you all, guys.
Okay, so over to Mike. I haven't got a microphone symbol against you, Mike, so I hope that's going to work.
Yes, I just had a little technical problem. It wasn't allowing me to share my portfolio for some reason. Hopefully you can hear me. Okay. I'm not going to repeat a lot of what's said, because there's some good things that have been talked about portfolios. Now, my work is very different. My work is very freeform, and it's illustration based. So I have done lots of different things in lots of different places, and I sort of settled into a method of working that balanced commercial work and also doing what I like doing. And my portfolio is very much a sort of a personal take on illustration. I was very fortunate to be able to find a style or find a method of working that allowed me to do what I wanted to do, and play with images and play with textures and play with in different forms, and also get this work published. And before that, I was working as an illustrator. I was doing a lot of packaging design and similar work to Stephen in some forms. Is very, very sort of commercial and very much led by what the client was doing. And I wasn't that satisfied with that sort of process of working, and I sort of found methods of working with using digital imagery and using photographs, and there was a whole load of stuff that I came back from after being on holiday, and I thought, okay, I'll start playing around with this in Photoshop. And I found a whole sort of using textures and photographs and bringing these together. And I sort of thought, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a risk with this, with my portfolio. I'm going to take a risk and do things that I think I want to do. And I made two pieces. There was this piece and this piece. And to get illustration work 20, 30 years ago, you would put your work into contact books, and the contact books, you pay to have a page in these books, and you put your work in there, and then the books were sent out to various different clients. And in this particular case, I put these two pieces in, and I put a few other pieces, and it just sort of opened up a huge snowball of work. And it was just, I was getting quite a lot of sort of clients and a lot of interest, and it was really nice. It was really refreshing because it was different than the way that I was working before, because this was a method of free form illustration. So what I was doing before was like painting by numbers, do a drawing and then fill in the color and then send it back to the client, and it sort of wasn't that satisfactory. It never allowed for any development, where digitally it allowed sort of a to and fro between you or me and the designer. So it was like, change this, do this, and make those changes. So it became a really interesting way of working. And one thing with building a portfolio is really important to sort of show work in context, because particularly with illustration, is you do an illustration and then that sort of gets changed when it gets published. So some of these works that I'm going to show now are some of the things that I was commissioned to do. This was the cover for the New Scientist. So it was a very flexible way of working. I found I could combine photographs with textures, with paint, and all sorts of different ways of working. So this was the published one. This was the published piece of work, and this was the original. So with a lot of design work, there was always this sort of process of you're working with a designer, and the designer would always say, or the editorial designer would say, "Oh, could we have space for this? And could you put that in there?" And using doing it digitally became really quick and a method of doing it, and it allowed for flexibility to go backwards and forwards. It was just really enjoyable, and you could take risks with the work. You could take all sorts of different sort of things that you wouldn't normally do with drawing and painting. So it was a process of sort of very much a sort of organic process. This one was for Oxford English Books, Oxford University, and it was sort of playing around with different textures and different photographs, and to achieve sort of using photographs. This is the original illustration, using photographs to create sort of sense of spaces. And this is what I started to sort of realize, is that I could create spaces that I enjoyed working with or wanted to actually see. So some of this sort of background material was painted collages and then overlaid with photographs. And the one thing that I found, particularly with digital illustration and using Photoshop, was using blend modes. Blend modes were these revelation to me that you could play with light and the way that different things were reflected. So there was a lot of experimentation in the sort of photography. And this led, I tried to sort of think about key projects that I've really enjoyed working on, and I thought that were sort of quite important. And I think when you're building a portfolio, it's important to put the things in that you think that are representational of you, but also it's also thinking about doing your research about the client or the person that you're going to go and see. It's very important, particularly with the work that I was doing, is understanding who you were going to go and talk to and how you're showing your work in a particular case. And I used to do a lot of portfolio visits. I stopped doing them. I didn't need to do them. As I said, the contact books were very much doing this for me. So, but this particular project came from somebody seeing some other things that I've done, and this was always what was happening with illustration, that they would see something and they would enjoy what it was doing. So this was an exhibition and publishing project, and it was very much about using archive material, particularly very personal material from Holocaust survivors. So I was given a bunch of material to work with and to build a series of illustrations. So there was a lot of sensitivity and backwards and forwards. This is the original illustration. And the approach was very much is that they had to be editorial, but they also had to be done for an exhibition as well. So they were very big. These were sort of nearly 2 meters high. So we were working at quite high resolutions with low quality photographs. The photographs that were given were very taken from disposable cameras, not very high quality cameras. They were very archival materials. They're very old. So there's a lot of jiggling around and trying to sort of make them look good at a high resolution, and then sort of putting textures over the top, but also very much spent being true to the person and the character. In each one of these illustrations represents a particular character and a particular experience. So each one of these was these are the original illustrations, and I'll show you how they sort of arrived at in their final form. But again, there was a lot of experimentation, and some of the questions that are coming up is this digital? Yes, it's digital manipulation, Photoshop. And it is very much a sort of trying in each one of these it's trying to find, a lot of my work is montage, it's collage, and it's trying to find the one image that holds it together, that binds it together, becomes a focal point. And also thinking about that you're going to have text and other things happening over the top of it. So this is where the to and fro goes with the digital process. So there's very much that sort of process. And this is one of the ones I was quite proud of, because I quite like this particular person. He was a carpenter. He was very proud of the materials that he'd made, but there was also this archival material in the background, but it was a sort of trying to sort of piece together to give a sort of a sense of focus. In this sort of scale, they do lose quite a lot because there's quite a lot of details in here, and as I said, they're quite big in what they actually ended up as. So, whoops. So, and then this was another one. This one's quite a good one, because this was, I think, so I remember, because it's quite a while ago as I did these. He was a teacher, I think, and he had quite a lot of archival materials. So he had a lot of letters which we could build on. But in this particular case, it's like building a structure. So it actually flowed. And the digital process really allows this sort of to happen. So it was an honor to work with this. It was an honor to work with this sort of type of material, and then sort of get the opportunity to sort of work to it as a collective piece. And this is how it ended up. So these are the boards and it was a touring exhibition, and it went around Europe. And they also commissioned, the people that did it, they commissioned these little boxes where they actually put some of the real objects that I'd used. They put these in the boxes, and then there was text about explanations there. So there was a sort of a sense of place and organization with the material as well. But it's trying to sort of, using the digital process, it was that sort of mixture of trying to create atmosphere and text, but also being true to sort of the original sort of stories. So that was one project. With all illustration, you're always as good as the piece that you've just done, and the work that you do, and it was always a sort of a series of stepping stones for me, that one thing would lead to another, or somebody would see this and they would say, oh, we like that, could you do this? And in that particular case, somebody did see that exhibition and they said, oh, could you do something similar to us? But we're a software company, and what we want is these big boards, and we want them to use them in an exhibition, and it wants to tell the story of the business. And so I said yes. And as you dive into these things, you just think, okay, yes, that's fine. And then you get halfway through it and you start thinking, how do I start working with this? Because this is very, very different material, very different context, because it was digital. They were a software company. And so there had to be that sort of element of sort of rigidity. So I came at this sort of idea of grids and breaking this up. So that sort of sense of form became from that. So it's like finding a pathway into the work, and that's how they ended up. They ended up as a series of boards in an exhibition. But my work is a lot. These are exhibition pieces. My work is always, it's existed in book covers and advertising and a lot of editorial work. The turnarounds are really very tight. In some instances, like a week, and some instances it's a month. So it changes depending on what the projects are. But this was really interesting because this led through, working with this particular company led through to doing motion graphics work. And I teach motion graphics. I teach at Bath Spa, not only at the OU, I also teach at Bath Spa University. So unfortunately, I wanted to show this as a video, but it wasn't working. So this is a piece of motion graphics work. So this is very different from what I've done before. So each one of these was an individual piece of video, and they come out. So it's like using the portfolio as a development from individual stages, and also putting in a little bit of risk in the work that happens. And particularly being an illustrator, you're commissioned because people see the sort of work that you want to do, and sometimes it's a good idea to put your own work in there. So this is a bunch of commercial work that I used to do, and it's sort of fallen by the wayside now for lots of different reasons. I just really stopped doing it because I was selling other people's work, and I sort of started to realize, and I was doing a lot of work where it was lovely to do, but it was like repetitive, and I sort of thought, yeah, I'm going to sort of fall back and do my own stuff now. I got to a point where I wanted to do my own thing. So what I do a lot now is I've gone back to drawing. I've sort of ditched the digital processes now, and I've gone back to drawing. And my whole practice is based around drawing ancient objects in museums. I tour museums around Europe taking photographs. So this one is actually a bull, and this is from the British Museum. So I take photographs and then I draw these various different forms. It's not commercial at all. So I've gone away from being a very overtly commercial and doing digital things, just using pencils and paper, and it's really refreshing and it's really enjoyable. And those sort of processes. So this is a sort of tiny little selection of the sort of stuff that I do, and there's sort of connections to mythology and other ideas as well. So this is a drawing. This was drawing of a Minotaur in Vienna, and it's keys into ideas of teaching, and the Minotaur was connected to being a teacher. So I drew and then rubbed on drawings of seeds, because seeds are stores of information. So there's like these ideas sort of spinning around. So this is the work that I'm doing now. This is what I really enjoy. And this has led through to another project, which I've been working on, and this goes back to digital. This is a digital image. So I've been going out and photographing Roman aqueducts, and I really like them because they're these objects that existed, and they exist all around Europe. They're 2,000 years old, and they still have a purpose and a presence in space. And what I've been doing is I've been going out and taking photographs and then stitching them together and then making my own collages. So it sort of connects the drawing to digital processes. And I've done quite a few of these, and it's showing them is quite problematic because the top one, this is a detail at the bottom, and the top one is the whole thing, and it's 3 meters long. So it's problematic to sort of show it as a sort of a process. But that's what I'm working on now. I think as a portfolio, as a creative person, it's really important to sort of put in and be genuine to what you enjoy doing. You never know where it falls. You never know who it's going to be seen by. And a lot of the work that I got was taking risks with the work that I've done. So just to make it quick, that is my portfolio. That's what I do. So has anybody got any questions? So I'm just going to go back, see if anybody's got any questions. Yeah, I think stepping away from the computer was really quite refreshing. Although this is digitally done, I couldn't do this I do drawings of these, but they don't come across in this sort of way. And I couldn't do this any other way in doing it digitally. So this is photographs. These are photographs stitched together. The backgrounds are painted. So what I've done is I've taken liquid paint and then scanned that and put that in the back because it keys into the idea that the aqueduct carries water. Thank you, Bella. Thank you. Yeah, I think the organic nature is quite important to me, that sort of sense of texture. And it's like creating things that are much more random rather than having something that's sort of fixed. I think, Claire, I think I am more an artist. I think I always was an artist. And to be truthful, I sort of went into sort of a design pathway, and illustration became a way of earning a living. And then the teaching sort of took over, and I didn't need to earn a living from doing the illustration anymore. And as I said, you're on a pathway where you're doing other people's ideas, and then you get to a point in life where you start to think, I don't really want to do that anymore. And it became harder to get good work, and the fees went down. So there's lots of reasons why I stopped doing it. Yeah, I think it does, Stefan. I think you combine it. It's finding methods that allow you to make the images. Is finding the theme of what you're doing, and then finding the method to do it, and finding those two combinations. The technical side of it sort of falls into it as well. This is quite complicated to put together. There's hundreds and hundreds of photographs here, correcting the perspective, removing all the buildings. This looks nothing like it is. This is in the center of Rome. Behind this is quite urban. So there's quite a lot of technical. And this, I think I took these last summer. I think it took me the best part of nearly 2 months to put this together. So I think I'm very conscious of time. So if anybody's got more questions, I think the one thing I would leave everybody with, if you're putting a portfolio together, is take risks with it and put something in that you believe in what you're doing. I was with an agency for a long time, an illustration agency for a long time. And one thing that they would say to you is that you have to do what everybody else is doing, but you have to do it like you want to do it. So if you want to do that commercial sort of work, is look at what everybody else is doing, you know, really saturate yourself and really become familiar with what is flavor of the month, because you always become flavor of the month and popular, and there are certain things that sell, and it's become very much harder to get work than it used to be. Yes, Theo, it is. Design and art is very much a way of life. It's you're fortunate to get paid doing it, but I think the hours that you put in are far exceeding the amount of return that you get from it.
Absolutely. I don't know anybody who works in art or in design that doesn't spend their every waking minute thinking about solutions to their job that they're working on, trying to get it finished, wanting it to be as good as they possibly could, because it becomes a labor of love. And I know sometimes you have to do jobs that you don't particularly enjoy, and that's where it's a chore. But I've always worked in jobs in art and design where you're working till 11, 12 o'clock at night, and it's just what you do.
I think the other thing I would finish on is the one thing that I would say is that I went into teaching, and I started to find teaching far more rewarding than doing illustration, not just because of the financial return, but because of it's a discussion of ideas, and I found that quite rewarding. One thing I would say, yeah, playing backgrounds, yeah. Art galleries have plain backgrounds. They have white backgrounds. Your work should be presented on a white background or a background that's neutral. You're showing your work. That's what's important, not the decoration.
Absolutely. And if you put a colour, remember that putting a colour against another colour will change the look of the colour that you've chosen for your work. So if you don't put it against a white background, it's actually going to change your original intention of what your colour was. So beware. It is quite trendy. I've seen quite a lot of galleries and degree shows, certainly in about the last 5 years, where they have like fuchsia pink walls, bright yellow walls and things like that. Grayson Perry did that at the Royal Academy one year. But it's, again, a trend. So it's safer to have something very, very plain, a white or even a black background if you want the colour to zing. It depends how you, but white is the safest option, I would say. Just to thank everybody tonight, thank you for coming, all of you who have been listening in tonight, and your lovely comments and questions that you've been putting up, and to the 3 tutors that have been kind enough to share their portfolios and their thoughts and approaches with us tonight, because I think it's been really enriching and fascinating to see. It's been a huge variety, and I hope you found it really helpful. I'm sure you have. I can't think that you wouldn't. So thank you so much, Stephen, Slavica and Mike, for giving your time tonight, and for the time it's taken to prepare your presentations tonight as well. It's been great. I will put the recording on the forums for you, so if you wanted to go back and have a look, I'll stop the recording now so I don't lose